Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thanks for coming to watch. We got an update on a major winter storm that's expected to impact portions of the northern United States, and it could bring down even more cold air into the lower 48, which could bring more chances for more heavy snow. Got all the details coming right up. So they are joining me here on this Monday evening. We have a lot to talk about in this video. We're going to be going over all the latest details on our current storm system that is working its way across central United States. It is actually bringing some severe weather, but also this upcoming snowstorm that will end up dumping potentially up to a foot of snowfall across the northern United States. So as always, we'll start out here by taking a look at your current radar. Alright, this is what we've got going on as of right now. You can see we have two things on your screen. One, we do have our ongoing severe weather event across portions of the Deep South and Dixie Alley. You can see we are right now talking about mainly a tornado and damaging wind threat. We did see some decently large hail earlier in the day, but that quickly transitioned to more of a straight line damaging wind threat. However, we have been seeing some, tornado warnings here and there that have been kind of, embedded within this line. So embedded spin-ups are going to be possible depending on how long this line lasts until we get into tomorrow. And then tomorrow we'll enter kind of the second phase of this event. But we did have a pretty damaging tornado in the northern suburbs of Houston, Texas earlier this afternoon. So definitely wasn't a complete bust, but definitely wasn't as bad of a scenario as it definitely could have been. But other than that, we don't have much going on. We do have some showers and storms working their way across the lower Midwest, but that's really not causing too much problems other than just some slow travel and some relatively heavy rain there. And then we also have our first instances of snow falling across portions of Montana and North Dakota. This will transition likely into very heavy snow as we get into tomorrow, again, when our major winter storm finally hits. Alright, so we move on here now to your current alerts here from the National Weather Service. You can see again a little bit more active times ahead, but as of right now, we do have winter weather advisories across portions of northern and eastern Montana, back into portions of North Dakota, Minnesota. You also do have winter storm warnings in that pink shade. We did just get introduced to winter storm warnings, so anywhere in that pink shade in northern Minnesota or northern Wisconsin, you guys are under a winter storm warning. And then we also have winter storm watches up for the UP of Michigan. So again, very, very heavy snowfall is on the way, and we'll get more in depth with that in just a second. We also do have some wind advisories going out for portions of southern Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa, and we also do have some high wind warnings going out for portions of South Dakota and Nebraska. So very damaging winds are expected as we get into tonight and into tomorrow. Again, with that low pressure system ripping across the northern United States, that's going to pull down lots of energy, and a very powerful cold front's going to come in behind it, and those winds could get up to 60 miles per hour, or even higher at times. So very damaging winds, very dangerous conditions out here in the northern United States. To the south, we do have a tornado watch here in our yellow shade going out for portions of southeast Texas and western Louisiana for ongoing tornadic events. So make sure, again, that if you are watching this video within the last, couple hours, or the first couple hours, I should say, of it coming out, make sure you are taking extra precautions, that you're staying weather aware out here, because again, it really does appear that we are not done with that tornado threat entirely, and we'll get more in depth with that as well in a second. So speaking of that tornado threat, we take a look now at the OOC HRRR. This is the HRRR run that came out earlier this evening. This is going to give us an hour-by-hour outlook as to what we can expect as we get into the early hours of tomorrow. You can see that our squall line is expected to continue to move off to the west, still bringing lots of heavy rain and storms into portions of western Mississippi and portions of eastern Arkansas. You can see it right here. This is the area I would watch for possible tornadic activity, so nothing too crazy, but definitely some embedded areas of rotation cannot be ruled out. So Greenville, Mississippi, that area, anywhere north of Jackson or Natchez, you guys are, in the path of where the strongest part of the storm could hit, and this kind of, continues to organize into a line before this gets a little bit deeper into Mississippi. But I do think there could be a period of potentially as high as 70-mile-an-hour winds coming from this line. Again, this really looks to me like a outflow signature. Again, very strong outflow winds pushing this storm off to the west, which would obviously increase that straight line damage wind potential. But Greenville gets slammed by this line here. Up next, you've got places like Tupelo, Jackson, Mississippi, Meridian, Hattiesburg, Tuscaloosa, and all the way out towards Birmingham. Again, areas all the way out towards Alabama, you're also talking about that damaging wind threat. So this is going to produce lots of heavy rain. I do think some flash flood warnings are going to be needed, especially to the north. I mean, this is a couple hours here of very heavy rain. I mean, look at that pocket of rainfall. That is just rain that's going to be lasting for hours, dumping on areas, and that's likely not going to let up for a couple hours. So it's going to be quite the loud evening and overnight hours as we get into tomorrow morning eventually. For our folks out here in northern Mississippi and Alabama, I really do think that some flash flood warnings, but also some severe thunderstorm warnings, and potentially even tornado warnings may be needed. But this is as we're into tomorrow morning. So right around when you're waking up, you have once again, still a nasty squall line working its way into portions of northern Alabama at this point. So Huntsville, Florence, all the way down towards Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, along the interstate here, you are going to be talking about the damage wind threat. I mean, this is getting very pronounced still as we're getting into the early morning hours of tomorrow. So this is when you're waking up to go to work or school tomorrow morning. You have a classic outflow signature here on your squall line, which is likely going to be, again, producing 60 to 70 mile per hour winds once this gets past the major cities out here in north central Alabama, and then eventually will fall apart as it moves off to the west. But I still do think that areas across extreme northwest Georgia, but especially central and northern Alabama, Mississippi, obviously Louisiana, Arkansas, all of you guys need to watch out for a significant damaging wind threat. A couple isolated tornadoes cannot be ruled out, but especially to the north. I mean, this is a significant amount of rainfall that's going to be coming down at once. I really am worried about that flash flooding threat, especially across kind of the border between Mississippi and Alabama. I think anywhere from Tupelo to Florence, all the way out towards Huntsville, you guys are going to be dealing with hours of very heavy rain. That's going to lead to a significant flash flooding threat, so please make sure that you have multiple ways to receive warnings, and that if you do get put under a flash flood warning, that you're not venturing out, and if you do have to travel, that you are turning around and not drowning, again, if you do encounter any flooded roads. But we now move on here to your run to our maximum updraft helicity swaths off of the HRRR. This is going to give us an idea of where the model run is predicting the most amount of spin within the atmosphere and these storms. And you can see there's not a lot, but there's a lot of, little tracks of embedded spin up rotation. When I say not a lot, I mean not that many, notable tracks. Again, there are kind of some spots out here across Mississippi and Alabama that you could say, hey, there's maybe a potential for a rotating storm or two, but I mean, there's really not a huge signal for anything significant. Again, we can't rule out the chance of seeing a spin up or two anywhere in, central and western Mississippi, even back into central Alabama, but other than that, again, there's really no significant tornado threat. I would rule out pretty much everything into Georgia. I'd be pretty surprised if we even got a tornado warning. But again, do not let your guard down if you are out here into Mississippi, Mississippi and Alabama. Again, I'm not saying that you need to be prepared for, a tornado impact while you're sleeping. I'm just saying that I would not rule out the chance of seeing a tornado warning or two for some of these storms out here as they rumble into again, the two states as we get into this evening and eventually into early tomorrow morning. But speaking of that severe weather threat, we look at our day 2 SPC outlook. So this is going to be for tomorrow. Again, this is all regarding what we're going to be talking about tomorrow morning. You can see we do have a slight level 2 out of 5 risk, including portions of Alabama, Mississippi, including Birmingham, Montgomery, Tuscaloosa, Hoover, and Alabama, and Meridian, Mississippi. So again, anywhere in that yellow shade, that's a 2 out of 5 slight risk for severe weather. And in the green shade, that's where we have the 1 out of 5 marginal risk for severe weather. Your tornado threat, it is a sneaky 5%. Again, definitely is the chance for seeing a couple of spin-up tornadoes. We cannot rule that out. So make sure you have multiple ways to receive warnings with that. So if you're in the red shade, you have a 5% tornado threat. In the green shade, that's the 2%. Okay, your wind threat, it is pretty low here, 5%. I do think that, if I were the SPC, I would bring this up to a 15% and drop the 5% tornado threat. I would kind of just flip-flop it. I do think this needs to be upgraded because damaging wind gusts will likely be the main hazard I think there will be enough spin in the atmosphere for definitely a couple tornadoes. But again, we just looked at the HRRR, and that was a very weak run, considering that we looked at, your updraft Felicity swath. So I definitely do think that, again, a spin-up tornado or two is going to be possible, but damaging wind gusts are likely going to be the main hazard, even though the SPC has us at a low risk. Obviously, they know best, but if I were them, I would likely push this a little bit higher. Again, there's a chance we can see this totally verified, but again, that is just my opinion. Then our hail threat's 5%. We're really not going to be talking about too much hail. Again, there's a chance that we could get a couple of instances of, pocket change size hail within these squall lines, but again, they're all outflow dominant. You have very poor lapse rates, so only a 5% hail threat is needed here, so, you don't need to worry about, hail damaging your car or your windows or your roof at all. It just definitely could wake you up, but really nothing much other than some gusty winds to damaging winds, some very heavy rainfall, and a couple of spin-up tornadoes. But once again, that is pretty much it. Nothing that you guys cannot handle. So now, we look at the NAM 3KM model. We're going to be taking a look at the north-central United States because, as most of you guys know, we have a significant, potentially major winter storm on the way for our folks across the region. We're going to be breaking this down hour by hour, but we're going to start out here by take a look at what we got as we're getting into tonight. This is your surface low here that's currently moving across portions of South Dakota as we speak, and you can see that a lot of the snow starts to evolve off to the north of the low pressure center. You can see we have lots of cold air nearby. I do want to kind of break down the setup for this event. You have a strong cold front coming down on the backside. You can see our 540 line is dipping all the way down to Nebraska. This is a great setup for folks north of where that low pressure center is. You have a ridge that's starting to push a lot of moisture up into that low pressure center, but also into areas ahead of the storm, which will obviously bring the chance for seeing more moisture and more precipitation, but we already see a lot of that happening. A significant shield of heavy snow developing across portions of North Dakota back into South Dakota, and then also some rain. You're starting out rain for portions of central Minnesota. So don't be surprised if you wake up tomorrow morning, you actually get some drizzle across central Minnesota. Now, it's not going to be cold enough just yet, I think, for snowfall, just because you can see our warm nose is still pretty far north. Again, this is pumping lots of moisture up into the region to enable the chance for seeing snowfall. You can't get snow without any moisture in the atmosphere, so that's definitely going to be a slight issue, but watch as this progresses. Again, we're getting farther into tomorrow. This is around lunchtime to early tomorrow afternoon. You can see we have a much more widespread shield of snowfall at this point, encompassing all of central and western North Dakota, South Dakota, but also those areas in central and northern Minnesota especially that started out as rain, you're starting to change over to snow because this cold front, it's all thanks to this cold front, it's continuing to blast a little bit farther south. So this is now digging into portions of southern Nebraska and pushing all of that warm air, that warm nose, to the south, because you have the moisture in play, you have the low pressure system, that brings you the chance for precipitation, but because the cold front is suppressing all the warm air farther south, away from where that snowfall could be falling, again, that's going to allow for temperatures to rapidly drop, and that's what we want for snow. So I do think that the closer you are to the rainfall, where the gradient is here, this is where we're going to have the heaviest banding of snowfall set up. I do think right in the three-state corner of Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, somewhere in there, just north to, or just to the northwest of where that low-pressure center is going to be located, I think that's where we're going to see, again, the heaviest amount of snowfall. Not the largest total amount, but just the heaviest, snowfall rates, if you want to put it that way. And then this continues to progress as it moves off to the west, and it just continues to look better and better, more like a healthy winter storm. At this point, all of Minnesota is dealing with snow at this point. You have a thumping of snow for our folks just west of that low pressure center. At this point, you're starting to see areas that haven't seen snow at all from this event start to get some heavy snow. You're starting to see heavy snow in the northern parts of Wisconsin here, and that low pressure center is continuing to deepen, getting down to 1,000 millibars, and you can see our cold front is continuing to drop down into the central United States. You can see it's very strong. That high pressure center is at 1,032 millibars, which is considered pretty high pressure, and the storm continues to move off to the east there. We'll actually switch things over to the Midwest, so you guys can get a better look at what the rest of the storm is going to be looking like. But you can see, again, heavy snow will continue across portions of the upper Midwest here as we get into the last couple of hours of tomorrow. So this is tomorrow night into Wednesday morning. We still are talking about heavy snow for the UP of Michigan, all of Minnesota at this point. Some flurries out here into northern Iowa, and even some heavy snow into northern Wisconsin. Again, I do think that we cannot rule out some heavy snow totals here, some pretty high snow totals just west of those of the low pressure center, but this continues to become a more negatively tilted trough, which is just going to strengthen that storm a lot. And you can see that we have so much cold air wrapping on the backside. And you can see just a very dynamic cold front here. This is pushing in very frigid Arctic air deeper into the central United States. This will also likely bring some very gusty winds here, but I do think that some snow squalls could be possible on the backside, again, with some lingering energy and a very strong cold front. Usually with these, scenarios here, we get a very strong backside storm system here to develop, or at least very heavy snow on the backside of these storms to develop with a very negatively tilted trough. Things like that can happen, and you can see we do actually see some Great Lake effect snow develop, and there even is a very strong band here showing up on the HRRR across portions of Michigan and Wisconsin. So even that can definitely not be ruled out. I do think some lake effect snow is definitely going to be possible, again, with the backside snow and energy of this storm. But that's going to end up to be a very impactful system. So now we look at the HRRR for your snowfall totals. So we'll start out here in eastern Montana. You can see that it is going for about 1 to 3 inches of snow. Again, areas a little bit further to the east across portions of North Dakota and South Dakota. That's where we're going to see the higher totals. Immediately as you enter North Dakota, the HRRR is going for a really nice zone here of 6 to 8 inches in that purple shade. Those darker shades of purple, that's where you're getting closer to 10 inches. And there even is a spot where we could get potentially a little bit over 10 inches of snow across southern South Dakota, southern North Dakota. Sorry guys, I got mixed up there. The HRRR is going for a signal of potentially a little bit less than a foot of snow in southern North Dakota, which would be, again, very impactful there, but a pretty widespread consensus here of about 6 to 8 inches in that pink shade. We shift things over down to South Dakota, and at this point we're still talking about some pretty, impactful snow totals. However, the heaviest of snow looks to be confined to areas in the northeast corner of South Dakota here. We're talking about, again, 8 to 10 inches of snow in anywhere in these areas of pink, but in north central South Dakota, 4 to 6 inches are expected, all the way out towards northwest South Dakota, where we're talking about potentially 1 to 3 inches. Now we shift our focus to Minnesota. Minnesota is going to cash in on this event according to the HRRR. This is with that same streak of snow that will be bringing 8 to 10 inches across the Dakotas into Minnesota here. This is when things can get pretty spicy again. We see some banding set up across central Minnesota. That could total up to potentially a foot of snow across our folks out here in central Minnesota. So Minneapolis, you guys are going to pop up with this event. Duluth, you guys are also going to do very well. Yeah, we're talking about 10 to 12 inches of snow anywhere in that dark purple and especially that red shaded area. And look at this in Wisconsin. We're talking about potentially, okay, the HRRR can overdo snow totals. We're talking about potentially up to 20 inches of snow. Okay, these are the areas that will be under winter storm warnings, and I believe they are under winter storm warnings already. Again, 20 inches of snow would be insane for these areas. Again, it's very early to see a storm this impactful, but, we'll just look at our states, more zoomed in for the heck of it. But this is Wisconsin zoomed in. I do want to look at this more zoomed in just because Wisconsin is going to likely be the most impacted state here. But look at this. Ironwood going for 23 inches south of there. Again, you're right around the 2 foot mark, but it's unfortunate for folks out here in La Crosse, Stevens Point, and Eau Claire. You're talking about only 1 to 2 inches. just to the north of there, you're talking about potentially over a foot of snow. So that's pretty crazy. But if you look in the UP of Michigan up here, this is where we're talking about pretty insane totals. Marquette and, like I said, Ironwood, you're going for over 20 inches of snow, which is going to be absurd for this time of year. But Duluth, you're going for around 8 inches on this run of the HRRR. We'll quickly go back to Minnesota here so we can get city names. But St. Cloud, you're going for right around 9 inches of snow. Mankato, 4 inches. Bemidji, 4 inches. Grand Forks, 3. And then all the way up towards Thunder Bay, you're talking about, again, a signal for 2 to 4 inches of snow. So, very impactful storm with that. Alright, but now we look at the 18Z GFS. We're going to be looking at the pattern ahead, as we're not done with the snowstorms as we get through that first one. So we still have very active times ahead. We're going to be looking at the GFS, the European model, and eventually back to the GFS to discuss how cold it's going to get and how much snow people could see between now and the next couple of days. Alright, so we start things off here with the GFS. We look at our first storm system go by that dumps lots of snow into the northern United States, and that leaves us with a very strong cold front. That brings down lots of cold air. You get your 540 line, the edge of the cold front, all the way down into South Carolina, which is pretty far south here, but this is a very unsettled jet stream, okay? This is a classic negative NAO phase here, which is, again, usually something that lasts a little bit longer, so this is not an official, negative NAO phase. But, if we were to just, say that this would be happening consistently for a month, that would be a negative NAO phase. Again, an NAO phase would last for a couple of weeks, not just, a couple of days. So that's why it's not an official NAO, but this is kind of what, an NAO, negative NAO phase would bring. But, again, that is just one Arctic blast there. Again, bring a big ridge into the west. Now, we kind of return to a zonal flow until we get a next storm system, okay? This is the big one that I've been worrying about and watching over the past couple of days off the GFS. At this point, it's about 150 hours out. So this is as we're getting into November 30th. So this is into Sunday, just under a week out from where we are now. We get a very deep surface low to develop across the central United States, and all of a sudden you've got a full-blown winter storm for pretty much the exact same areas that we're talking about right now. You can see we have a very large shield of snowfall across the high plains all the way out towards the Great Lakes here, with obviously a lot of rainfall occurring on the backside. So it looks like another one of the storms we're going to get a deep cold blast, likely into the west central United States, with a ridge spiking in the east. And we watch as this continues to play out here, and that's pretty much what we see. Again, we see lots of rain and potentially some severe weather down here into the deep south and the southern plains, while we see the north stay very cold with lots of snowfall. But that storm kind of fails to do much as it enters a little bit farther, eastern areas. It really, does its thing across the central U.S., but then it starts to dry out and fall apart. But the savior for this storm is going to be the second piece of energy, the second wave of energy behind it. You have another deepening low pressure system digging down into the extreme southern United States. I mean, this is getting down into the desert southwest, already bringing some rain and snow. Watch how quickly this thing jumps to connect this, piece of energy lingering from our first storm. Okay, we do see a phasing process occur, and bam, you get a full-blown winter storm with lots of mixed precipitation on the northern flank and lots of rain and, heavy precipitation on the southern side. So this would bring, again, more warm air into the east, which would bring, again, above average temperatures, but you see the ridge build in the east, and then back into the central United States. That brings down more cold air. So this is like a second or third significant Arctic blast here. Alright, we get lots of snow and frozen precipitation, mixed precipitation on the northern side, and again, severe weather with areas south of the low pressure center. That's how things work with this storm. That's kind of, what the setup could look like. Again, this is just under 200 hours out, but this is as we're getting to December 2nd, so still quite a ways out. I believe this would be a week out from Wednesday, but this continues to evolve and advance farther to the east, and this becomes a very significant and impactful winter storm. I mean, this would bring significant problems. Serious problems to our folks out here in the Northeast. Again, you get a likely very significant ice storm with frozen rain, sleet and freezing rain across the eastern United States and very heavy snow across the lower Midwest and Ohio Valley before that moves out. So that is another very impactful winter storm a little bit farther south for our folks out here in the Northeast. That would be your first significant snow totals of the event, or of the winter. But that is the main storm that we're watching for as we get into December. After this, the GFS is starting to get a little wonky again. We're getting into that time frame where the GFS becomes, pretty unreliable, shows a lot of crazy scenarios. But to get an idea of what the upcoming pattern, the long-range pattern could look like, the GFS is on board of a couple more shots of cold air and more active times ahead, very strong storm systems. So, again, not a forecast, but I really do have a strong feeling that December, the early couple days of December, the first week of December is going to be very cold for our folks in the west, the central, and even into the areas of the northeast. But I also do think that many opportunities for snowfall are going to be on the table. Again, if I were to highlight one area, it would likely be anywhere in the vicinity of the Midwest. I think anywhere in the circle, you've got a pretty good shot at seeing a impactful winter storm between now and the next 10 days or so. I do think something big is on the horizon. Still got to figure it out. But something big is definitely coming, and obviously we'll just have to continue to wait for more model guidance as the days go on. But we look at the European model quickly, and the European model is also on board with that first winter storm, bring more snow to those exact same areas, although it is a little bit farther south, so you do miss out for your folks out in the very high plains, but it is a hit and a bang for our folks out here in the lower Midwest. We talk about the Great Lakes region once again, Michigan, Wisconsin, northern Illinois, northern Indiana, and Ohio. You guys all are receiving snow from the system. This is as we're getting to Sunday, so just a couple days after Thanksgiving. You can see that storm continues to move off to the north. Now, the European model does actually fail to connect the southern piece of energy, which actually is pretty much non-existent on this run. Okay, you can see a little bit of energy gliding down from the high plains with this amplified jet stream. Okay, but it really does not connect with anything to support a significant winter storm. So you already have serious model agreement only 198 hours out. That's why I'm telling you guys this is not a forecast. So we look at the European model, and it shows a rather, slow pattern. Again, you're getting past 250 hours out, so there's pretty much no point looking this far out. But you really only get that one storm system, and there's really nothing else much to talk about other than lots of cold air. So I want to make this clear when I say this. There's a very good chance that we only see a very cold pattern with no snow. Okay? There's a chance that if we don't get enough energy out in these, areas that are talking about the cold weather, there's a chance that snow is going to be limited. So again, it all depends on if our cards are lined up perfectly and if the timing is right. I do think that there's still a chance that that could happen. So now we look at the GFS model for your total snowfall totals out here between now and the next 200 hours or so for our folks in the Ohio Valley. And you can see that this is a very impressive signal for snow. Again, between now and the next 200 hours, the GFS is going for lots of snow. I mean, we're talking about numerous inches, potentially multiple feet of snow across portions of the upper Midwest, also including the Great Lakes region. But look at this single snowfall back into the Ohio Valley and lower Midwest. I mean, this is a very active storm track that we're talking about that could lead up to, inches, several inches of snow for widespread areas. Again, this is a very, very strong signal for snow, not a forecast, so do not take any of these numbers seriously. But again, our folks out here in the lower Midwest, and especially the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region, get ready. I really do think that some of these areas are going to cash in over the next couple of days. I think with the signal this big, we really can't ignore it, considering that we're only just about 200 hours out. I definitely do think at least one major winter storm is on the horizon. But we now look at the GFS here once again for your 2-meter temperature anomalies. We want to look at how much warmer than average it's going to be, or how much cooler than average it's going to be. So these are our temperature anomalies here. You can see with this first cold front that's bringing more cold air down into the southern United States, you can see we could see temperature anomalies get down to potentially near 10 degrees below normal as we get into our post-Thanksgiving couple of days here, but all the way down into Florida, we're talking about potentially less than 10 degrees below average temperatures there. And again, that is with the first Arctic blast. And then you can see our main one, our main attraction here, if you will. Our second one brings down much more significant and robust cold air. I mean, look at this, guys. This is a huge Arctic blast. You're talking about potentially close to 30 degrees below average, which is insane. But this pushes out most of the warm air off to the east. Again, you're staying mostly above average for folks on the East Coast after this. But this is, bringing frigid, I mean, potentially dangerously cold temperatures into the northern and central United States. Again, that is a very significant Arctic blast, but that continues over the next couple of days, just bring more and more cold air. I mean, look at this. The entire country almost is below average as we're into December 4th, so pretty far out still, but that is a huge signal of the GFS for very cold times ahead, and it holds that pattern for the foreseeable future. So again, very, very cold and active times are ahead. And for the last part of the update, we look at that just in one more way here at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. Let me move my camera a little bit further, a little bit lower here so you guys can see the key here. But again, this was issued today, or at least this was revised today. This is valid for November 30th to December 4th. We have a 80 to 90% chance of below average temperatures across the high plains here in this dark purple shaded area, but anywhere in the blue, this is where you have a chance for seeing below average temperatures encompassing all of the west, the central, and even the northeastern United States. And only the southeast and part of the mid-Atlantic is staying above average. So again, I really am confident in saying that early December is going to be very cold and likely very snowy for our folks out here in the central, the north, and the northeastern United States. Alright, so that's about the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button below. I will make sure that I continue to give you guys updates, consistent updates on what our active pattern is going to be looking like. If you're in the deep south or especially in the northern United States, make sure to stay weather aware, whether it's coming to severe weather or winter weather. But as always, make sure you guys are having a wonderful time out there, enjoying the snow, and I will see you guys in the next video.